You know, kids just don't get it. I think that's what a lot of people think when they find out that some young person, someone who's 12 or 13 or 15 or 16 takes up smoking. A lot of times people think back to when they were kids that, if they just knew then what they know now, they know they wouldn't be smoking. And they're thinking that the kids must be getting this information about how dangerous smoking is. I mean, many people who've been smoking for decades, I mean, honestly, when they first took it up, they didn't know there was anything wrong with it. But there's so much information now that the general assumption has got to be that, kids just, they must not get what's going on here to be taking up smoking in this day and age. I agree, kids don't get it. But by it, I mean they don't get the real understanding of what they need to make a very intelligent decision about smoking. Yes, there's a lot of understanding about how dangerous smoking is, but trying to relay that message to, people before they take up smoking is really a difficult process. When I worked at the hospital, I used to try, because I had time on my hands, I'd be doing a clinic and I'd have a few hours on any given day, where I'm not doing a program and I'm not doing my phone calls. I used to try to go out to schools to do programs, and I would spend quite a bit of time trying to, break into the schools to be able to present assemblies to help the kids in the school understand the dangers of smoking. Well, that wasn't an easy process. Now, understand, we're not talking about trying to get the school to pay anything. These are volunteer programs, just trying to do, public education to the schools. Well, schools are really busy. They had very packed agendas and they had very packed schedules, and it was hard to get this message in, especially because the school had already, covered the material. That's what I was always told, schools are already covering it. How are they covering it? Well, they had a program in there like something like DARE. DARE is where they'd have police come in and, they'd be the local police and do programs about drugs and smoking and drinking and, trying to help people understand, to make smart decisions. And so they really didn't need, me to come in and talk about the dangers of smoking because DARE was covering it. Problem was, I was doing programs in lots of venues at this point besides just schools, and sometimes I was doing adult programs, and there was a few times where I was doing presentations at places where I would actually have DARE officers come in. It was pretty interesting because the DARE officer, who was basically keeping me out of the school, that's not what he was doing, but that's what the school was designating as the reason I couldn't be there. It was inevitable that they would often come up to me at the end and they would just be amazed by what they had just seen, the presentation I'd just done, and they would always say was, I never knew smoking did any of this stuff. Well, this was pretty interesting to me because the reason I wasn't being able to get in the schools is because it was being covered by DARE. I would meet the DARE officer who would come up and tell me they didn't know any of these things about smoking, and now it was pretty obvious that the kids weren't getting it. They weren't getting the information about smoking. You know what the DARE officer was doing? They were talking about drugs. They were talking about how they were illegal and how they were bad. And then there would be a side mention, oh, and you shouldn't smoke. I mean, that was the message they were getting from DARE about smoking. It was minimal. But even if the DARE officer had some sort of personal feeling about smoking that they wanted to impart on the students, and they were going to try to help them understand, how dangerous smoking was, they weren't doing it because they didn't know it. Let's understand something. Most people don't understand just how dangerous cigarettes are. Parents, when they find out the kids are smoking, are sometimes disappointed and they're sometimes mad, but sometimes in the back of their mind there's just like feeling like, oh geez, at least it wasn't drugs, at least it wasn't alcohol, at least it wasn't some real bad activity. All they did was kind of they're playing around with smoking. When parents are making this kind of commentary, if they relay that kind of feeling to the kid, you better understand what message you just delivered to that kid. It's like, smoking isn't that big of a deal. You've got to understand about smoking. Smoking is more deadly than all these other things that they say, well, at least they're not doing this, at least they're not doing that, at least they're not doing this, all they're doing is smoking. Oh, come on, take all the deaths that all these other things cause, combine them together, and they don't come close to killing what cigarettes did. They don't understand the dangers. The parents don't understand it, and the kids don't understand it, and now they're making decisions without understanding what they're making a decision about. They're working with the basis that they're never going to be regular smokers. Yeah, maybe they've heard that smoking is bad, but that's for people who smoke for years and decades and who smoke packs a day, and they're never going to smoke like that. You interview high school kids, age kids, who smoke already, and you ask those kids, how many of them think they're going to be smoking 5 years down the line? 5% of kids who smoke today think that they'll be smoking 5 years later. Well, when surveys were done, following up kids on a prospective kind of basis, they found out that it wasn't 5% of the kids who thought they were going to be smoking were smoking 5 years later. It was 75% of the kids who were smoking in high school were smoking I think it was 7 to 9 years later. I can't remember for sure, but I think that was a statistic. But I do know it was 75%. But understand the implication of that statement. For every one student who thought they were getting addicted, for every one, 15 of them got addicted. And now, again, to understand the danger of what they got addicted to. If you look at 20-year-olds today, for every 1,000 20-year-olds who are smokers, if they don't quit smoking, what are the risks that these people are going to die down the line prematurely from different kind of problems? What are the risks that they're going to die from, certain diseases? What are the risks that they're going to die from, certain societal kind of issues? What are the chances they're going to die from their smoking? Well, if you take 1,000, 20-year-old smokers alive today who don't quit smoking, 6 of them will eventually die prematurely from being murdered. Yeah, we live in a violent world. You turn on the news any given day and you can hear about murders. In different cities it's higher than others, but they turn on the national news, there's murders happening all the time. There are. Yeah, you look at 1,000 20-year-old smokers, 6 of them are not going to make their maximum age that they should have been able to make because they're going to be murdered prematurely. Okay, 6 out of 1,000. 12 of them are going to die in accidents. Oh gosh, accidental deaths are big. I used to get people coming in the clinic saying, well, why should I quit smoking? I can get run over by a truck. I usually heard that one a lot. I had a 5th floor window out of a hospital, and I was on a major intersection of 2 streets. And I used to look out the window all the time, looking for this truck that must be running over all these people in my town because, how many would come in and say, why should I quit smoking? I get run over by a truck. Well, in years and years of, looking out this window, I never saw anyone hit by a truck. Does it happen? Sure. But what's the risk? Well, again, take 1,000 20-year-olds who smoke today. 6 of them will eventually die from being murdered. 12 of them will eventually die from, being in an accident, kind of like the truck, but all accidents. 500 of them are going to die from smoking. This is the magnitude of the problem, and kids don't get it. They don't get the 2 messages. One, that if they experiment with cigarettes now, they're likely to get hooked to it, and if they get hooked to it and they don't stop, it's going to kill them. It has a 50% chance of killing them. And that's not saying that the other 50% get off scot-free. They also often get impairments and problems throughout their life that may not cause their death, but may make them a whole lot sicker, the years that they do have. They may eventually get, run over by a truck, but their quality of their life that they had before that accident may have been impaired because of the years of smoking that they were doing and the problems that it caused them, the destruction it did to their lung that limited their ability to breathe. It may have made their life a whole lot less pleasant than it would have been if they had never taken up smoking. So again, the message here is don't work with the assumption that kids just don't get it, that there's something wrong inherently with them. Are there some kids who, if they were delivered the message, were going to still take up smoking? Yeah, there are. There's people who are rebellious and just going to do it. But I suspect there's a whole lot of others who, if they were delivered the information, if they were helped to understand what smoking was and what it could do to them, that they may make the intelligent choice and never take it up. Many of the people, I suspect most of the people who are watching these videos are people who want to quit smoking, and a whole bunch of them who have quit smoking. They are a resource of information now. They have kids. They have nieces and nephews. They have grandkids. Share with them what you know from your personal experience. Come on, you likely took up smoking when you were a kid. You very well took up smoking without knowing the dangers. You found out the dangers afterwards. And again, some of you didn't find out the dangers until you came here looking how to quit smoking. But you know them. Share with them how it was that you got yourself hooked. Share with them how dangerous it was, and share with them how hard it may have been for you to get off of smoking. Yes, you may have had an easy time, and you can say that. I don't want you to lie to them. Be honest with it. But also, if you're watching what happens to other people who had a much more difficult time, you can share that information. If you read at the Why Quit site and you look at those people who lost their lives, people who lost their lives in their 40s and their 50s, who struggled with smoking, didn't quit, and died, share that kind of understanding. The more the kids get of information, the more they will get it. And if they get it, they may make the intelligent decision to not start smoking at all. Or if they are smokers, maybe they'll make the decision now, early on, to stop smoking and to make the commitment at this point in time and to stick with it the rest of their life, to be able to stay free by understanding the same thing you understand, that to stay free from smoking is as simple now as committing and sticking to the commitment to never take another puff.